Hi, and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about key insight 1, decarbonization of industries. Well, if you look at this trend, there are quite a number of factors that's actually driving this forward. The first is rising stakeholder demands. So basically, the changes in attitudes are putting pressure on businesses to change the course for a low carbon future. So consumers nowadays are fully aware of the environmental implications and impact of their choices. So for example, when you go shopping and if you get a plastic bag, they are aware of the consequences. And also the younger generation, especially Gen Z and millennials, are very tech savvy. So if they want to do their own independent research, they can easily go online and search for whatever they want, including things like the raw materials used for the product, where the product sourcing is done, whether the employees are treated ethically with dignity, honor, and respect, and so many other factors. So for consumers, it's not just buying a product or a service anymore, it's about the whole representation, or what the brand stands for and values, and whether it lives by those values and it's committed to those values. So that's what the consumers nowadays are looking for. And also businesses are starting to feel the pressure and are beginning to realize the need for a greener and sustainable planet, but also the need to ensure customer loyalty, long-term viability are also there. There are also things like concerns of making ESG commitments, or what we call environmental, social, and governance commitments, which we're going to talk about in our next lecture. So ESG commitments is basically ensuring that you're committed to both the environment and also to the people, and also you have very strong governance and compliance frameworks in your business operations. So consumers are looking whether these commitments are public and they are following through those commitments as well. Then there are things like sustainable energy use. So we talked about the fact that energy and heating industry is the largest polluter of greenhouse gas emissions annually globally. So consumers are aware of this, and consumers want to know what the companies are doing to switch to a much more greener and a sustainable future. Then there are factors like policy and government targets. So many governments all around the world have set mandatory carbon reduction commitments and targets. So for example, the Paris Agreement and then the United Nations Climate Change Conference. And all these agreements and commitments are formulated by governments to accelerate the transition towards a much more greener and sustainable economy. So for example, the European Union is said to be carbon neutral by the year 2050. Then there's carbon pricing, which is basically a metric that captures the external cost of greenhouse gas emissions. For example, the cost of emissions that the public pays due to instances like the damage to crops, healthcare costs from heat waves and droughts, loss of property from flooding and sea level rising, and factors like that. Then there are things like adapting a price on carbon either through direct taxation on fossil fuels or through something called cap and trade programs. So cap and trade is basically an incentive given to companies to encourage them to reduce the emissions of pollutants, and also it acts like a marketplace as well, where you can trade your credits with other companies. So for example, if you are still relying on fossil fuels, you have to buy permits for greenhouse gases that you release. Then there are things like investor pressure. So in response to these policy shifts and consumer demands, investors are also changing their investment strategies. So for example, if you look at the world's largest asset manager, which is BlackRock, which manages about $9.8 trillion worth of assets under management, is strictly enforcing investment guidelines like using ESG frameworks, selling investments which advance fossil fuel consumption, pledging to vote against management teams that do not disclose their sustainability KPIs, and many other sustainability focused actions. Then there are factors like technology cost reduction, which is basically accelerating the decarbonization of industries. So exponential technological innovations in criteria, for example, battery packs. If you look at battery packs, it was around 1000 kilowatt hour. In 2010, it came down to just $156 per kilowatt hour in 2019 due to the massive breakthroughs that we had in battery technology and many other related technologies. So these things are advancing the acceleration towards a green economy, and also the advancement of digital technologies like 5G, which is globally being rolled out right now, and also factors like global low Earth orbit satellite internet coverage. So we are going to see global internet coverage in the next few years. Internet of Things, which is basically smart systems which can connect online and then transmit all the telemetric data. So data like humidity, temperature, ambient sound, vibration levels, and everything of that sort. Then there's blockchain technology, which is an immutable ledger which is globally distributed across continents. Then there are things like digital twins, which is basically a digital representation of physical entity. So it's capturing data in real time and it's creating a digital version of the physical entity. And then there's artificial intelligence enabled business processes, which focuses on continuous improvement, reducing waste, increasing the productivity and efficiency. Then we have something called carbon capture and storage technologies. So this is basically a combination of technologies designed to prevent the release of carbon dioxide, which is generated through industrial processes and conventional fossil fuel based power generation by injecting carbon dioxide to suitable ground storage locations like abandoned oil and gas fields, deep saline formations, and unminable coal seams. Well, that's about it for Key Insight 1, Decarbonization of Industries. I'll see you on another lecture.